The Justice That Works Act of 2016 measure is being proposed by anti-death penalty advocate actor Mike Farrell. Supporters must gather more than 365,000 signatures over the next 180 days for the bill to make the November 2016 ballot. California has not executed a prisoner in nearly a decade, and 740 convicts in the state are now on death row. Joining me with a look at the status of California's death penalty is my guest, Alex Simpson, Associate Director of the California Innocence Project at the California Western School of Law in San Diego. And Alex, if this new initiative to abolish the death penalty actually does qualify for the ballot, it'll be the first time since 2012 when a similar initiative failed by the voters, just barely. What do you think has changed since then?
You know, I don't know that there's anything kind of in terms of the tenor or the tone of the conversation behind the death penalty between those two period of times, except that as the California's finances have gotten worse, the idea that we're spending millions of dollars on the death penalty and executing people is not as interesting, is not as favorable for even proponents of the death penalty. And so I think that might have been what's changed.
So this measure, again, the Justice That Works Act of 2016, what does it exactly propose?
Really, all it's saying is that for the people who are on death row, their sentences would be life without the possibility of parole, and that people going forward could not be sentenced to death, and the greatest sentence that you could get would be life without the possibility of parole. And really, as a practical matter, that is what happens in California, even for people who are sentenced to death.
You're saying that they stay alive, except that, what would you say to the people who say, well, sometimes people make mistakes? We've seen it on television where somebody's been acquitted of a death row conviction because new evidence, new DNA evidence has actually proved they're innocent.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of cases across the country where people have been exonerated from death row. And that really shows, I think, you know, the fact that we don't always get it right. There's nothing special about a death penalty case that means that we are more likely to actually get this right. So the people who are exonerated off of death row are really a testament to that.
Well, last year a federal judge ruled the death penalty is unconstitutional in California. Remind us of how the Judge Carney came to that ruling.
The judge really came to the conclusion that the death penalty was unconstitutional, not for the traditional reasons that it's cruel or unusual punishment in the traditional sense, but that it's really arbitrary. There's no real determination about whether or not somebody is executed because there's multiple victims or if it's an execution of a police officer. It really has to do with kind of the behind-the-scenes things about whether you get an attorney at the right time.
And where does that ruling stand now?
Right now it's being challenged, appealed in the Court of Appeal, and it is awaiting determination, but that could take months.
And part of the reason for this bill, as you mentioned, is this enormous cost of death penalty cases. A lot of that has to do with the long appeals process, in some cases taking 10, 15, even 20 years. Why does it take so long?
You know, the short answer is that you've got a very difficult system in place in California and in other states as well, but especially in California. The review process takes a very long period of time because there's very few people who can actually represent somebody on death row. And there's just a shortage of people who are able to take these cases.
And why the shortage? Is it qualifications?
It is, definitely. You have to be incredibly qualified and experienced to represent somebody on death row. I've been practicing for 15 years, and I'm nowhere near qualified to represent somebody on death row.
Do you think California voters this time around will overturn the state's death penalty?
You know, it's an interesting question, and I think one of the things that the voters are going to have to struggle with is if you've got this ballot initiative, a vote for the initiative is you saying that you would actually like some of the money that's being spent on these death row cases to go to police officers, to firefighters, to teachers. And I think even if you're a proponent of the death penalty, that might be something that interests you.
How much money are we talking about?
Well, you know, it takes about $2 to $3 million per case to actually prosecute, convict, and sentence somebody to death. So that is money that's not being spent on infrastructure or on other projects. And I think that's something, even if you're a proponent of the death penalty, that's something that you might be interested in.
All right, Alex Simpson, thank you so much.
Thank you.